big enough. This is Tom Brady. He's not just going to retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate Brian Murphy to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. He's the most overrated player. And there you are, the Chicago Bears with a championship defense. And I'm sure Dancing with the Stars is happy to have Antonio back. If you thought you were going to get Zion, that's your bad.
We're now listening to Open Season. Your host, Billy Allen.
Welcome. Good evening, everybody. Open Season here. I'm your host, Billy Allen. I got Frank Bradica with me. We're tossing a whole lot of subjects back and forth tonight. Let's be honest, if you're a Sox fan, we're going to rip on the Sox. I'm just not happy with what they're doing before the All-Star break. It seemed like they couldn't be more excited to get to the All-Star break, and they probably need it. Nobody more than Pivetta. We're going to be talking about the Celtics. We've talked a lot about the trades. We're talking about where they're going to slot in for this year, what our expectations are of them. LeBron had some comments on Boston. We'll be talking about those. Chris Sale is hurt again. Yes, we will be not the biggest fans of the Red Sox tonight. I don't know. Frank maybe might pull for them, but we'll see. But we'll also talk a little bit about LIV and the PGA, probably, put a bow on top of that. But first, we want to talk a little bit about LeBron James and his comments this week. If you did not hear them, I'm sure you did, but let's play a little bit of clip of Keyshawn Johnson and Kendrick Perkins reacting and listening to LeBron James on his podcast.
Boston. Yeah. Why do you hate Boston? Because they racist. That's why they will say anything, and it's fine. It's my life. I've been dealing with it my whole life. I don't mind it. Like I hear it. Like if I hear somebody like close by, I check them real quick. I move on to the game. Whatever they're gonna say, whatever they want to say. They might throw something on you. I got a beer thrown on me leaving the game. It's Boston.
Yeah, so, right there, Frank, you got the comments. Look, we all know that I love LeBron more than anything, but I feel like he does sound pretty clownish here, especially years ago when he mentioned that Boston, wasn't racist, and now just kind of dumping them on top of the podcast. And, the Celtics who have had trouble kind of attracting people the last few years. What do you think of these comments, Frank? Obviously we haven't heard any shortage of comments, people saying that Boston is racist or whatever, but, even going back to like KG or whatever, when he first came here, but, what do you think these comments do for athletes, potentially coming to Boston? Is this actually something that people do think about when you potentially think about playing for Boston?
In that league, the answer is just yes. Regardless of what you think or want it to be, the answer has been yes for probably 20 years now. And he's not the first. KG, Marcus Smart, Torrey Hunter, Bill Russell hated living here for the first 15 years he was in Boston. He despised it, and he was winning. So I'm sure there's merit to some of these comments. I just don't have a lot of time or empathy for the pro athlete complaining about these things. As a person, I don't adhere to who do you think you're talking to like that, because anybody's going to speak however they want to, and words don't hurt me. So if you're a pro athlete, I do think they can talk about your family. I'm sorry. And I do think they can talk. Like, I don't think there is an out of bounds, because I think you need to have thick enough skin. I'm so sorry. And I get the other side of it and the mental health and all of it. I just think that's par for the course. Part of the $40 million is that it's baked in there. I'm sorry. They should never get to touch you. And I'm not a big fan of that throwing BS. No throwing beers. If you throw 2 beers, you deserve to have Ron Artest punch you. It's still, you should be allowed to say things you wouldn't say to their face. You shouldn't be allowed to do things you wouldn't do without security. So no throwing things, no physical contact. But I'm all for the words. I'm over it. I have no empathy for the pro athlete in that circumstance. And I know I'm in the minority there, but I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, and I just think it's interesting that, like they talk about how LeBron's he basically averages, 30 points a game at TD Garden or something like that. So it doesn't seem to have really a negative effect on him. But it's just, getting the conversation going again. And you just wonder if, when it always does come up, I mean, whether it's Kyrie or whoever it is, you just wonder if people do actually care about, if you're in free agency, is that something that goes into your decision-making process? And I just wonder, now that Boston is finally a destination, if these comments do anything like that for players that are maybe toting the line.
Well, I mean, we know the answer to that, don't we? It's on the list, right after.
Do you care more that you could join up with like two young studs in Tatum and Brown, or do you care more about, like, I just feel like that's not going to hold a lot of athletes back who want to come to Boston. I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Largely older players don't care about playing with two young players. Most players are aware that they can get traded next season. Money and roll. It's money and roll. Nobody gives a hell that Boston is racist or a city is racist if they're going to get the role they want and the money they want. That's what it is.
Nobody wants to win a title.
If they're back and forth and they're going between us and the Lakers, yes, they may be like, you know what? The first 7 priorities I have on my list are neck and neck, and at least in LA, I won't have to deal with a racist fan base. Sure, it might play a factor. I think it's more narrative and confirmation bias. It's an excuse rather than the truth, because ultimately, when it comes to these negotiations, it's rolling money, right? Like,
yeah. So you're saying nobody wants to win a title these days, Frank?
The player who prioritizes winning a title above all else is few and far between. And in this generation, there's so much talent, they usually can't overcompensate with that mental fortitude.
I just feel like these days people think they can do it all. I mean, look at LeBron, like, thinks that he could go like wherever and win a title. Steph Curry doing all these things and winning titles. Giannis winning all these MVPs and winning titles. I think people think that they could have it all these days, right? Like, you could get paid the most money and win a title and be in a good destination.
Durant has still never led a team and won a title. Chris Paul has still never and won a title. You just named like 4 players, and that's awesome. But James Harden doesn't have the and won a title. So James Harden didn't get to do whatever he wanted and win a title. And most players haven't had that luxury. LeBron and Curry are nice.
James Harden is never going to win a title, so I don't think that's ever going to be something that we could throw on at the end of his, unless he absolutely ring chases at the end.
Not for nothing, because this isn't on like the agenda, but since we brought his name up, from what we hear, he's willing to take massive pay cuts. He wants the Philadelphia 76ers to build that team, and then he'll take what's left. If that's something he's truly doing that isn't ring chasing because he was already there, and I think something Carmelo didn't do until he was cashed. So if Harden has stuff left in the tank and is willing to do that, big ups to that man.
Oh my God. I mean, are we really going to give him that much credit? The guy's been going to like strip clubs in the NBA playoffs the last however many games. I mean, he's probably made like $300 million through basketball, $300 million through his shoes. I mean, is he really that much of a hero for taking a salary cut at this point? I don't think anybody wants to pay him that money is the reality. If he could still get that money, he'd take it.
But the fact is he can get more in Philadelphia. And taking less to have better players around him is something that he was never willing to do. Carmelo wasn't willing to do until far later in his career. If he's still got stuff left in the tank and is willing to take less money as a former MVP, yes, that is commendable. It is. I'm sorry. I'm not a big James Harden guy outside of the fact that he's a lefty. Couldn't really stand the guy. But that's a big move. And if he's cash, like biggins, it doesn't take a big man to realize I don't have it, so I won't take as much money. But if he's still going to put up 20 and 10 next year and willing to take, sub 30 million, that's a discount in this league.
Yeah, no, certainly. I just think it's more that he has to take a discount at this point in his career, quite honestly. Who's going to pay him that money? Who else is going to pay him that money?
You don't think he can get 2 for 70 right now from a half a dozen teams in the league?
You don't think there's been a big conversation, his drop-off in the playoffs this year and how much he dropped off?
Sure.
So how many teams are trying to get to the front of the line to pay $35 million for this guy?
I think if you are the Lakers, that sign-and trade is important to you. If that money's important to him, you'll find a sign-and-trade suitor. I feel like if you are the Celtics and you have trade exceptions and Al Horford, that is a move you could make. And I'm not saying any of these teams should do this, but if James Harden was sticking to I want my money, unlike Harden, unlike Irving, he would have gotten it. Or sorry, unlike Irving, unlike Westbrook. Apologies.
So his stock hasn't gone down at all for you, basically, is what you're saying.
It's totally gone down. This is still the NBA. When he was healthy, he was still productive. Even in the playoffs when he was bad and his percentages came down and his turnovers went up. He still is a guy who can be a second or third option. So that's still going to get paid in this league. You mean to tell me that you mean to tell me less teams are going to line up to pay this version of James Harden than Tobias Harris or Jusuf Nurkic or I'm not even going to try to pronounce that again. I accept the failure. But that Trailblazers tall goof. Like, come on now. That dude's getting 20 mil. I'm pretty sure teams will give James Harden 35. I'm just saying.
Okay, all right. I just don't know how many teams were clamoring to do it after that postseason.
Clamoring is a strong word, but will they pay him? You're worth as much as somebody will pay you, and if he's willing to take less than what other teams will pay him, that is commendable. I'm not pushing for him, but you refuse to put him in this.
We should commend him. I certainly commend him. All right, so Ayton, happy with the resolution. Goes to the Suns. Obviously there was word that he was pretty excited about joining Indiana as well and having a chance to be part of that tandem, with some of their young studs. The guy's escaping my name right now, the 22-year-old point guard for Indiana. Who is that kid?
Holiday?
Huh?
Is it Aaron Holiday?
No, not Aaron Holiday. Oh, God. Halliburton. Christ.
Tyrese.
Yeah, so Halliburton. So, yeah, obviously they were going to be a decent, but he ends up staying with the Suns. I mean, I don't know. I feel like so many of these moves have been lingering. Like what's happened here with the Durant thing? That just completely died. Like, what's going on there? What happened with the Donovan Mitchell thing? Like, that just completely died. What's happened with the Kyrie thing? That's completely died. And then and this move, too, it just seemed like the Suns, I mean, they wait so long. They wait till, like, the 11th hour to ultimately sign him. Like, how vital of a piece? They touted him as a vital piece at the end. How vital do they actually think when they allowed Indiana to put the offer in? They allowed it to go to this stage. It's almost like they realized at the last second that they shouldn't let DeAndre Ayton go.
No. I think this is exactly how you play it if you're an NBA franchise. I mean, vital is a word you say to satisfy the ego. He is important in the same way that ball boys are important and referees and cheerleaders are important and the merchant workers, they are important. The guy working the hot dog stand, they're important. He's worth the money that he's making. He is. I'm sorry. But waiting to the last hour is absolutely something they should do. Because if Durant gets traded the day before or if other dominoes fall into place and you no longer need that or you need him as a sign-in trade, you do that. So holding him to the 11th hour is smart. And then at the end of the day, you weren't going to get Irving. You weren't going to get Durant. Nothing bigger could happen for you. We're going to be safe, and we are going to match the offer. That's NBA 101. If you're a friend, it may not make the player feel better. It may create resentment, but it's the right way to do business.
Is it really to get a guy like that, like to piss him off a little bit like that? I mean, I don't know. It's going to obviously make him feel a little bit I just feel like they truly waited to the 11th hour to sign him.
He's not a 1 or a 2. You don't piss off a 1 or a 2. You can piss off Draymond or Marcus Smart or Kevin Love or Chris Bosh.
Can you piss off Marcus Smart? Because apparently when you trade for Malcolm Brogdon, you have to call up Marcus and say, hey, Marcus, this isn't a shot against you. So can you piss off Marcus Smart? Because I don't know if you can.
It's an organizational failure, but it's also indicative that he's not a 3. You can piss off a 3. You can't piss off Marcus Smart because he's a 4 who thinks he's a 2.
Well, it seems like he gets pissed off pretty easily over there, breaking his hand.
If Chris Bosh is willing to take a larger decrease in role than Marcus Smart, he really needs to do some soul searching. I don't care how many hashtag winning plays he makes. I mean, it's unreal. Kevin Love goes from 26-12 to 10-10, and he's okay with it. But Marcus Smart shouldn't have to worry about responsibility and turning the ball over. Enough. Marcus Smart he's got to go. Not a Marcus Smart segment, but the guy's got to go. And you can piss off a three because traditionally those guys have been pissed off. Horace Grant was pissed off. Dennis Rodman took time off. Robert Parrish doesn't always have.
You've got to put in a call when you get somebody better than him and Malcolm Brogdon. You got to put in a call and say, "Don't worry, Marcus. You don't have to get upset."
Organizational failure. That's got nothing to do with a three or being able to piss off a three. That's got something to do with the organization, the Celtics, and Marcus Smart, and their horribly codependent relationship on him because they're both killing each other, just like addiction. They're both bad for each other. We should both wish each other the best in their future endeavors.
So you just talked a minute about maybe the Suns get Durant or something like that, waiting for another shoe to drop. What is going to happen with Durant? Why is this taking so long? I can't really remember a time where a player like Durant, his status has been in question this deep in the summer. Same thing with Kyrie Irving. I mean, obviously these are unique situations, but what's going to happen? When is the next shoe going to drop with these guys?
Well, Kyrie's certainly different, right? It's certainly probably the first time we have this exact scenario. It's somewhat pandemic related. It's different. He's talked about retiring. He's like 32. It's just different. The Durant thing, nobody who knows you want to get rid of something is going to give you top dollar. So that's the Durant thing. Durant's going to be a net. And it's because they want Jaylen Brown and 3 firsts. No, you can have Marcus Smart, you can have Derek White, you can have 3 firsts. You can have Time Lord, Marcus Smart, 2 firsts. You know what I mean? And there are deals to be made that would make that team good. But in that league, you never get a dollar for a dollar. And once he says he's leaving, wants to leave, just like Anthony Davis or Pau Gasol, usually you get Al Jefferson or Kwame Brown. Like that's usually who you get. Jeff Green for Ray Allen. That's who you get.
And when you first said this, I thought you were crazy that he was going to stay there. But honestly, it seems like as the days go on, it seems like I don't know where he's going to go, where they're going to be able to keep the same team. I mean, by all counts, if he was to go to Miami, he wants them to keep all 4 of those guys. So it's like
he wants the mellow deal.
If he goes to one of these teams, he's going to completely gut them and not be happy with the team that he goes to. So it looks like the longer this goes on that he's probably going to be with the Nets. Do you see a situation other than that? I know you were probably the first people that brought this up to me, but do you think that there's a situation where he goes somewhere else?
The Nets will either relent in their asking price or no. If you're any other team in the league, how could you possibly give them top compensation without so much as a promise that nuclear crybaby is going to resign and stay and have any form of longevity? Like, no way.
Well, if he's not going to honor that Nets contract, signs a fresh 4-year deal, and then asks for a trade, I mean, how could you ever be confident that he'll honor anything?
Look, the Jazz want to trade Donovan Mitchell a year after they signed him. So I'm, again, all for player movement. I talk about it all the time. I don't hold these against players like other people. But if he re-signs with my team, it's different than me getting him from a 4-year contract from a different team. Because he's re-signing here.
What happened with that also? It's like the Mitchell deal seemed to be done, and then you haven't heard anything about it.
I just meant the contract. I didn't mean the current trade rumors. I meant that they signed him to a deal last offseason. And now
no, I just mean like now, like it seemed like the trade with the Knicks was basically done, and then you literally like haven't heard anything for a week. It's just like all these deals, there's been so much smoke, and then there's just been a complete like impasse of all these.
I think the league realized what I was one of the last people on the planet to come around on, which is that Donovan Mitchell is hopefully a 2, but he might be a 3. I mean, I always said he was tenacious on defense and that he'd get better. The man's only gotten worse. He's one of the worst defensive guards I've ever seen for a guy who has the body and athleticism to be able to guard. Hasn't really ever, I don't think he's ever eclipsed 5 assists a game. He just hasn't gotten to that level where he makes everybody else around him better. He's not transcendent. He's very, very good. He works very, very hard. He's, a notch below the Jimmy Butler type. He's a bulldog, but he's just not enough. And therefore, where's the compensation? See, the trade market got broke with the Rudy Gobert trade, by the way, is the real response to. Why are all these deals being talked about but not made? Because when Gobert breaks the trade market for a gazillion firsts, everybody has unreal expectations. You need to let things regress back to the mean, and then we'll start to see movement.
Yeah. No, I guess you're right on that. Let's see. So the Celtics, as far as they look this year, it's almost like we've seen them kind of like when they've had too much talent, it's almost like they've been worse off. I keep thinking that might be one of the bigger things that they have to worry about this year. I mean, they're freaking stacked. What do you think about how this team will fit together chemistry-wise?
This isn't a bashing, but either it works swimmingly and I'm a fool, or it's not going to work with Smart. I think Brogdon was a great move here. I don't think Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart work. I haven't thought they worked for a couple years now. Brogdon and Smart also don't work. But I think Brogdon fits way better with Tatum and Brown. So if the team does something they've never shown any capacity to do since they drafted him 6th overall, if they show the capacity to sit him, to give him the minutes he earns, then it'll work just fine because we have plenty of talent. But we're going to play him 30 minutes a game and Brogdon 21, and that makes no sense. And so, no, it's not going to work.
That better not if that happens, that will not work. They're not going to play Brogdon 21 minutes a night. No chance. He's going to get more time than that.
You love to bookmark when I'm wrong about things. Mark the date. He's going to end up in the low 20s. 23 minutes per game or lower, despite should be playing 32.
How will he average 23 minutes a night? There is zero chance that Brogdon is going to average 23 minutes a night. He won't even average under 25. He's going to average 30 minutes a night on this team for sure. For sure.
He's not going to. I don't think him and Smart fit on the court together. And they're going to go with Smart because they are Stockholms or something. They're like, Marcus Smart must have pictures of Whit Grossbeck that are unspeakable. Because I can't believe that we kowtow to him at every turn.
Is Brogdon not going to finish these games, though? Like, for his shooting, for his defense, he's not going to finish these games?
Yes. Schematically, yes. But do you think that the coaching staff or management is going to tell Marcus Smart that he's not finishing these games? I would tell him that. I don't think the team will. I don't think the organization will. I know Jason Tatum won't. I know Horford won't. Brown will, and they'll fight about it and throw chairs because they're petulant children.
I hate it. I hate it so much. I hate. How do they not see? How can you let your fifth best? How can you let your fifth best player dictate?
Call the shots. How can you let your fifth best player dictate anything? And that was a great. I'm sorry for interrupting you because that was the perfect way to phrase it. How do you let that man make any decisions?
God, if this happened anywhere else, we would clown them so hard. Boston fans would. But
Can you imagine if a left guard was like, I want this running back, and the team cared? Or when they were bringing on a swing guard that they had to call Joe Tooney and ask if he was okay with it? Like, are you kidding me? This guy is not I'm not going to say he's not a winner. He makes tons of winning plays. I like the player. He is not if he's your third best player, you're not a championship team.
God, if they had a good point guard this year, my God, they would have been so good. They were so good without a good point guard.
I got to be honest. On that point, the reason we needed Brogdon, have you ever seen two superstars, like in a vacuum, have you ever seen two superstars less adept at handling the basketball than Tatum and Brown? I've never seen an elite player get too close to superstar level like Jaylen Brown and dribble it off his foot as frequently as he does. It's unbelievable. Even when he's coming off like handoff and he goes for his first step and he puts it down and it goes off his knee. I'm like, I haven't done that since the YMCA.
Yeah. I was never the best dribbler, so I can't make a lot of I mean, I'm sure I'm not a better dribbler than those guys, but
I'm sure I'm not either, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not a better dribbler than Jaylen Brown. But I'm 100% sure that I'm not getting paid $20+ million to dribble said basketball. And if I was, I may never score like he does, but I'd never turn it over. I would hold that shit like a running back. You understand me? So, no, I wouldn't dribble it off my foot. I feel very confident about that.
Well, you might travel a bit if you're holding it like a running back. But, I mean, Giannis holds it like a running back, and they don't seem to ever blow the whistle for him.
It's amazing. I get how much of a freak he is, but nobody should be able to pick the ball up at half court and dunk the ball. I just don't think that should be possible. I don't, whatever the rules are to where,
especially when he can get there in 2 strides.
But just like the 3-point line, if the game evolves to where people can pick the ball up at half court and end up dunking it, then we need to change the size of the court. If 5 players can do that, then that means that in 10 years, 20 players will be able to do that. Let's figure it the F out. No way. Either he's traveling or the rules are wrong. Change the rules. If Kareem can't dunk and Wilt has to play out of the basket and they invent offensive 3 seconds and they widen the paint for shit, like if they do all these things, then yeah, at some point, no way somebody should be able to pick the ball up at half court and dunk it. I know that's not on the topic list, but since you brought up Giannis, it's stunning because sometimes it does look like he doesn't travel, but something's wrong.
There are things that they never call. Like they never call travels. They also never call free throw violations. Like if you watch every single time there's a free throw violation, people just start walking before the guy even shoots the basketball. And so, like, I don't get how they should just enforce some things or get rid of them. I mean, when's the last time you saw a defensive 3 seconds called, too? I mean, there's just some things they just flat out don't call.
I would be okay with no more defensive 3 seconds anyway. The league is such a shooting league anyway. If you have a guy,
it would probably be impossible. You'd be getting torched if you were getting defensive 3 seconds anyway. You know, somebody's going to be out there shooting on you. But
I think the palming and the carrying, you gotta figure that out. And here's the thing that Harden created. Because if you land at the same time, you never establish a pivot foot and all that. But if you land a millisecond off, then you have established a pivot foot. And refs have gone to interpret that as he landed at pretty much the same time, so he can do whatever he wants. No, actually, 1 foot technically landed first. That is his pivot foot. As soon as he picks it up, that is a travel. If they just, and I understand it, that's not fun, and nobody wants to get semantical. I mean, how obnoxious was the NFL when nobody knew what his catch was? I get it, but I mean, some of this style of play is absurd and not great for the sport to begin with.
Frankie, why don't you give us this day in sports?
All right. Unsurprisingly, as it is the dearth month of sports in America, we're going to start in 1910, please. We've got Cy Young, a double dosage. How about that? 2 times in 3 weeks. A man who hasn't been alive in quite some time getting recognition. Cy Young wins his 500th career game. Did it in 11 innings because pitchers used to just do that. We're going to move right ahead. 1914, Boston Braves begin their drive from last to first, win the NL pennant 3-2 against the Cincinnati Reds. 1936, Hall of Famer Bob Feller. Not sure if you've ever heard of him. Hall of Fame starter. Ends up making his MLB debut in relief at 17 years old, which is why it's on the list. Thought that was cool. Didn't know he was that young when he started. 1973, Willie Mays is named to the All-Star NL All-Star team for the 24th time. Ties stand mutual. Willie Mays probably, for my money, the greatest baseball player of all time. Certainly one of those 5-tool players who shaped the way a lot of my favorite players play, like the Ken Griffey's of the world. They're influenced. Willie Mays.
Willie Mays, yeah.
Willie Mays.
I can see that.
And then 1990, last one of the day, Cincinnati Red Pete Rose is sentenced to 5 months for tax evasion. Oh boy, we should have seen it coming.
All right. Well, great. No big tennis news. I mean, that's the big thing I'm taking away.
It was there. It was there. It was there, but I decided to let it go.
So before we get on to the MLB, talk a little bit more about that. Is there anything else crazy that we need to talk about? The Bucks signed Pat Connaughton to an extension. Do you think, I guess, to just touch on our Harden point, do you think he'll have a bounce back year? Do you think he'll be kind of like where he was at the playoffs? What do you think for his, what are your expectations from him this year?
I think
I think he's going to take a bit of a step back, but not as far as you would. Like, he'll probably be about what he was with the Nets, before he went to Philadelphia this year.
I think statistically he'll be fine, comparable. I'm looking for something of a change in style of play from him. Just because I think he'll put up the same numbers, but I think if he can accept anything close to Vince Carter on the Mavericks or Anton Jameson as a Laker, just one of those roles, I think would be far more important to him. He's going to be the second option on the team, but are there games where he has 8 points and 17 assists and they win going away? I think that would be the bigger question, because that'll tell me if he's actually taking a step back. Because physically, clearly he's taking a step back. He never took care of his body, but he also was never the most gifted athlete. He's still going to be able to travel. He's still going to be able to get to the free throw line. I think now that they've overcorrected for a year, you're going to see them meet in the middle this year, and things will regress close to not what they were before, but they'll meet in the middle. It's not going to be like it was this year, which was great. So I'm more willing to see, can he as a Philadelphia 76er win games where he has a double-double and points aren't one of them?
Yeah. No, I mean, I was just really surprised. I think one of the stats down the stretch, like when they lost to Miami or something, I think there was a game where he only took 2 shots in the second half or something like that, one of those losses. And there was also a streak that he went on in the playoffs where it was like 11 or 12 straight games, like under 20 points or something like that. And I remember, like, if you had to think 2 years ago, you probably wouldn't even think that was anyhow possible. When he was on that streak of scoring like over 25 points a game, like for me, the drop off was just insanely fast. Like we talk about people like Westbrook.
But what are LeBron average in that finals? You know what I mean? Like we've seen we watched Ray Allen as Boston fans shoot 70% from the free throw line of the playoffs, where he could be in a wheelchair and shoot better than that. Sometimes these guys just get into each other's their own head. And I thought it would be physically impossible to imagine a second half where he shoots 2 shots, doesn't even score 25 points or something like that. You know what I mean? Like a couple of years ago, to even think that he wouldn't be able to score 25 points in a game was almost like impossible to believe. To have a game where he wouldn't even shoot more than 2 shots in a second half is like, I would have bet my house that would never happen, That's why I don't bet. This is why I was just going to say, this is why gambling is bad, because Kobe had that FU front office game against the Phoenix Suns. I'm pretty sure he took something like 2 shots in that second half. I'm pretty sure that was as petty as it gets, and that's a winner. Like James Harden's a loser. That's something we've seen from a documented winner. So that's kind of just something that happens in that league. I hate to always make light of it, but that's a very, very petty diva superstar league. It just is.
Yeah. I mean, everything is these days.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's flip the page a little bit and go to baseball. I think, to start, the big thing everybody is talking about is the Juan Soto deal. Whether or not you think it's smart, whether or not you think it's crazy that he passed up on it. For me, I think my thoughts, Frank, but I just think they weren't even offering him truly what he's worth on an annual basis, just as far as, like, obviously none of these guys are worth $29 million on an annual basis, but as far as where he's slotted in baseball, I think he could probably go to a team and get like a 10-year, $40 million deal per year, a 10-year, $400 million deal. Or even if he signed a deal right now for 5 years, when he gets out of that, he could get a lot more money than potentially what he's going to sign for with the $440 million deal. Also, who wants to sign up to live, to play for the Nationals for the next 15 years when they've shown no dedication to winning and, quite frankly, gotten rid of pretty much anyone with any talent on that team in the last season or so? I think they've lost already 100 some odd games since last All-Star break. So I think there's a lot of reasons that actually make sense. I think people who would just look at this, who aren't big fans, are like, $440 million contract. How could you say no? I actually see a lot of reasons that it makes sense that he turned that down.
The Red Sox have a history of doing this where they know that they're not going to re-sign a player or raise what they know market value is. They did it with Lester, and they're kind of doing it with Bogarts right now. They love to tell you and leak what the offer is so that after they're gone, they can say, well, we tried. And that's what this feels like. 15 years. We wanted to make him a national for life. We wanted to keep him. I mean, $29 million, 29.9, I think is what it was. 27.5 is what A-Rod got for his contract 20 freaking years ago. So the idea that that's where the money is or that's where the market is absurd. I'm so sorry. If you're a baseball player, you got to be signing 3-year deals right now. The way these teams are just tanking, and every year 20 teams out of 30 are trying to lose. And any year you might get one of these next generational players in Osuna or one of these next generation arms, and you might want to sign with that team. If I'm signing 3. I'm signing 3 for 40, 3 for 55, 3 for 60. If I'm him, are you kidding me? If I'm Osuna, if I'm Machado the next time he's up, it's 3 and 5 year deals. These 10-year deals in baseball, they matter when you're in your latter 20s. And I understand that's when teams are going to learn, now that they've got the nerds, to stop paying them. They're going to only sign them when they're in their mid to early 20s. And I'm sorry, that's just not what a pro athlete should be signing that. You have to get 2 or 3 contracts in your career if your health permits it. It doesn't matter about the years. It really doesn't, because all that gets deferred and what have you. I understand in baseball it's different. It's more guaranteed than, say, the NBA or the NFL. But still, if you're looking out for yourself, I can go to a better team with more upward mobility for more annual value in 3 years. Yeah, let me sign up for that, please.
Yeah, it's like you used to want to sign the longest possible deal because you would lose a ton of money if you somehow got injured or something like that. Now it's like you're losing money if you sign that long guaranteed deal because of how much it's going to change over the next few years. We talked about it being ridiculous for Manny to be paid $160 million like 20 years ago. People are already getting contracts like 3 times that, So if you were to sign that 1 year, that 15-year contract, you're leaving a ton of money on the table.
So I think I agree. And I asked you this question, I believe, with Judge a couple weeks ago. But I don't care what the name is. Insert the player name here. Isn't any bidding war good for baseball? So if this kid hits the market and you've got 20 teams that want him, isn't that the best case scenario for the sport? Is that him and Judge hit the market and that they're not directly linked to the Yankees and Dodgers? That there's an actual bidding war?
I mean, baseball can use as much help as it could possibly get right now. Anything that would drive more results would be good for baseball.
I just think it's an easy one. I think that's an easy one. We've not seen a bidding war since Valentine's Day 04. Was that A-Rod? I think Valentine's Day. I think it happened on right around that time anyway.
Something like that.
And that was good for baseball. Peyton Manning following his van from the airport. That media coverage. That is good for the NFL. Those things are good.
It's too bad the Red Sox won't be bidding on anyone unless they make like $4 million a year. Is the new way that they'll be betting on people.
I mean, we're talking about baseball. If you want to start on the Red Sox segment early, we can just go right into it. The Red Sox.
Let's do it.
I don't know how you could be happy with anything the Red Sox have done. Their payroll is nearly $200 million, and they've got so many holes. They offered Devers, 8 for 160? Why would he sign that?
It's literally a joke. I mean, especially with what they did with Bogarts, too. They offered him basically 1 year, $30 million extension. I mean, it's like amazing how they just will not pay the guys that prove themselves in this market. Like, there is no incentive to be loyal here as like one of these long-term guys. And then when you're somebody like Bogarts in a year like this in your contract, and the Red Sox aren't even going to extend themselves at all at the trade deadline, like you're asking this guy to give his all, with no potential reward really, and you're not willing to invest in the team from like a trade standpoint. It's just, how can you ask these guys to be loyal, to give? I don't understand how they could be fostering a very good culture with the way that they're handling things there. Like, what does that show you? That if you could be Devers or Bogarts and you can't get the money that you deserved, how are you supposed to win there? You got to be the kid that they just paid $4.5 million to for 4 years, and they destroy his arm by trying to turn him into a starter so that they can look smart, act like they're the smartest guys in the room. Hey, we just paid this guy $4.5 million. Yeah, we've blown like 20 saves since we were last able to pitch him. It's just
wait. I can answer the question. You can let guys like Nomar go if you smash your evaluation of talent around the league. You can let guys go, Mo Vaughn go, homegrown talent. If you nail Manny and nail David and nail Pedro, you can let those guys go, no problem. But if you let Lester go, and then you overpay for Price, trade him and picks to get rid of the contract, and then Pomeranz and then Sale, all when you just could have paid Lester, you just didn't learn. You just didn't learn. I mean, the Trevor Story contract baffles me because you've already got the guys. And again, if you're great, and if you're in a run where you're nailing trades and you're nailing the free agent market, then let some homegrown guys go and learn how to work that. You're the freaking Red Sox. You're the Red Sox. I'm cool with that. But if you have no recent history, and your recent history is Price and Sale and Hanley and Panda, then I don't know why in any conceivable way you wouldn't be trying to back up the Brinks truck for these two players.
Yeah, exactly. Carl Crawford. I mean, you could keep naming people off. Adrian Gonzalez.
Back in that time, but when they signed Crawford, they still had guys on arbitration contracts. They had Buchholz, they had Ellsbury, they had Pedroia. So they brought in somebody from the outside, but they were nourishing their young, homegrown, not yet paid talent. These guys are no longer not yet paid. It's the time is to pay them. And for the record, if you're the Red Sox, you did pay Pedroia. So I don't know why this is so freaking foreign to you.
Yeah, and then it's just like any team in the league would beg to have two guys that they need to sign like this and would just like blindly pay them. But the Red Sox have to dink and mess around and piss these guys off by like they're so far apart. What you're offering is just does not even make sense how you're coming to the way of what you should be paying these guys. And it doesn't make any sense, for guys that have been in the organization their entire career, been great teammates, leaders, do it every single year, high pressure. And it just, there's no incentive to perform like that here.
I just feel like there's a difference between trading like Anderson Espinosa and Moncada for Sale. Like that's different than allowing Mookie Betts to become an MVP and World Series champion for your team and then leave, and Betts do the same thing and leave. It's different to let these guys be here the whole time and then walk out the freaking door. I just don't understand. Excuse me. What the fuck?
What were you saying?
Apologies. I just don't understand how you get to that moment where you have all these homegrown guys, and this is what you want. For the record, they've been trying to build their farm system for years, and you know what their hope is? That they get somebody half as good as Mookie Betts, Xander Bogaerts, or Rafael Devers.
Exactly.
That's their hope, and they just did this.
How can you maybe you could make an argument on why you shouldn't keep Bogarts? Maybe. But how? How can you say Devers, who is 25 years old and already has multiple years, he's leading the MLB in extra base hits since 2019. What is the argument?
What is Devers batting this year? 314?
At least, yes.
Yeah. I mean, but Bogaerts has been Bogaerts is something that I don't think Devers will ever be, bless his heart. Bogaerts is a legitimate leader in the clubhouse, mature guy, answers the media well, has relationships, has the bilingual thing, which I don't think really matters in most sports, but very clearly matters in baseball. I think he can do intangible things that Rafael Devers cannot. So I don't think either one is a real question.
Yeah, I really don't think he's a question either, but I was just saying, like, maybe you could somehow bend yourself into a pretzel to explain why you shouldn't sign Bogarts. I can't see any earthly reason why you wouldn't sign Devers. I mean, there is no reason.
Can I ask you why the Patriots can't seem to develop pitchers or hit on free agent pitchers?
I have no idea.
Going back to Lackey, we have not signed one that works. Like, and yes, Price and Sale worked for that year, as did Eovaldi. So, like, I get it at different years, but they both won. So I get that they brought you a ring. But none of these players were what you wanted. None of these players were what you thought you were getting. And none of these players brought you what Pedro or what Schilling brought you. And Pedro's one of the best of all time. So you're maybe never going to get that again. But you should be able to get a Tim Wakefield somewhere along the line. You should be able to get a David Wells, a Kurt Schilling. The idea that everybody we draft ends up on somebody else's team and usually not being good anyway, and that we can't sign anybody that's not better than Drew Pomeranz or the knuckleballer Tim Wright. Like, these guys are jokes, and we bring them in, and that'd be fine if we brought them in for depth. But the Red Sox have a history in the last 5 years of bringing them in and giving them meaningful roles.
Yeah. And you finally thought that they found someone with Pivetta. And, I mean, he's absolutely been torn to pieces his last 3 starts or whatever. I think he's given up 20 runs in his last 3 starts. Like, it seemed like he was actually looking like he was going to be making it towards the All-Star game. He had, like, 2 months of, like, a 2-something ERA. But it's like, this is what happens with these guys. Like, yeah, you could pay them nothing. They could be an all-star for a little bit, but over time, it's worth it to invest money in someone who actually is, who you're not just playing the matchups on, and who is like a bona fide stud. Like, there's value in that. And I get that the statistics and all that don't show whatever machine that they throw these numbers into or whatever. But how is there no value in a Bogarts or a Devers for all these nerd equations that they have?
The analytics work, but they just don't tell you who's a horse and who's not. I'm all for getting 80% of the production for 90% less cost. Like, I'm all for it. I get it. And 90% of your team can be built like that. But if all of your team is built like that, you will crush, because the big bad wolf will come, and that team will have a best in the league, a top 5 this. That team will come at some point. And if you're just Filene's basement, Sears is going to move in at some point.
I agree.
Department store, how do you like them apples?
And I mean, for this team too, it's just like, you could tell that they, like, they wanted to get to the All-Star break. They are kind of like falling apart. Like, you could feel that they feel that the leadership doesn't believe in them a whole lot, and like, they can tell that they don't want to make an investment in them.
Well, isn't this the same place we were in last year?
Yeah.
Identical, pretty much.
Like, at this point, when you're the Red Sox, you should be making this investment every year. Like, you're always going to be, especially now with how many damn teams make the playoffs, like, you should be always in the playoff contention. You're 2 games out. If you don't make any type of...
They're in the playoff contention. What if, I said they're in playoff contention. What if that's all they want? Like, what if just winning,
Sadly, it probably is. Sadly, it probably is. It's because it's just another investment in the portfolio. Like, oh, we're profiting here. Yep, we're profiting here. Now let's buy the NBA team. So sadly, that may be enough, which gets back to the whole thing of you should only be allowed to own one sports team. Like,
when they bought this team, it seemed like they were going to base whether or not it was a success based on whether or not they won a ring. When this team bought, it was 02. This team that Lucchino and John Henry and this ownership group were brought in, and clearly something in that paradigm has shifted to, as long as we're in the surplus on the balance sheets, that's good enough for me. I just don't think winning matters to this group as much anymore. And were old when they bought the team. So they're very old now. And they're rich, and it's just another, Sharpie mark on the whiteboard.
John Henry doesn't have Lucchino to take the bullets for him, at least, anymore.
Sure, but I mean,
that was Lucchino's. Well, it's just you bring up Lucchino. That was basically his job, was to take the shrapnel for John Henry. Oh my good Lord. You are not this popular. How are you getting your 2 calls during this show?
I'll tell you why. Because I don't use my laptop for this show, and the person whose laptop it is does have friends.
Ah, there we are.
Yeah, they do not belong to me. I don't claim these people.
Oh man. So
one thing I do want to bring up, because we only got 10 minutes left and it's not overwhelmingly exciting. The home run derby, win for baseball. And much like the 1 game play-in that they took away, and that was the best thing baseball had done in years, they will change this home run derby format and ruin it again. This is the most exciting version of it I've seen maybe since Bobby Abreu went crazy. I mean, this was the last 2 years. If you sit down and start it, you'll have a very hard time not finishing it. The way they've implemented the clock and changed it made a greater sense of urgency. It's far more exciting. I think it's what they want. It's exhibition, but it's competition and it's competitive. It's better than it's been in a decade. So naturally, baseball will change it soon.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the only thing that the MLB does that's like better than anything else. Like, this is the best thing that the MLB is doing right now, is the home run derby.
Well, I'm hoping that the game goes into extra innings, because I think that's a great rule too. If the All-Star game goes to extra innings, it's going to be a 3-man home run derby. Each manager picks 3 players. I think that idea is gangbusters. Have fun sometimes, baseball, you old curmudgeons. Like, sometimes it's nice to innovate and have fun. It's okay to add a pitch clock. It's okay to do certain things to your game because it's so out of touch with the rest of sports. It's a 4-hour sport in a TikTok world. I mean, that's just nuts. The idea that a bunch of old, adult, successful men can't look at that, and women, can't look at that equation and go, oh, we shouldn't be doing something to make this better and more consumable for this generation, is laughable. It's so stupid.
God, Pujols. What a nice night for him. That's cool how they got him involved.
Yes.
I think that was also would you be if you're Schwarber?
Well, Schwarber is smoke and mirrors anyway. I like Schwarber. He strikes me as the type of guy who can hit a ball 500 yards with like a fat lip in, but he's never going to take great pitching yard. And he's worse than Giambi. Like, you understand? Like, he's a bum, kind of. I understand that he's probably going to hit maybe 50 home runs this year, but he's still a bum.
Worse than what, Giambi?
Probably both. I mean, isn't he on par with Jeremy? You know what I mean? Right now, is it like, I don't know that he's that much better. I really don't. I'm not going to lie to you.
I would say that Schwarber is considerably better than Jeremy Giambi. I think Jeremy Giambi's best year was like 20 home runs, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I understand that. But if you account for today's inflation in numbers, that's 29, that's 30, and this is like an MLB made up stat. The inspected inflation home run percentage. Home run inflation through generation. Transcendent stats here on open season.
God. You'll see that next year in the score sheets. That'll be part of it.
Yeah, but people will get paid off it. I know we never brought this up, but in NHL this offseason, there was this big thing about if defensemen were going to get paid off like actual production or their Corey numbers, which is like some advanced. That makes no sense to me. And I get, again, I say it all the time, analytics work in sports, and they work for your 3rd through 55 in the NFL, 3rd through 12 in the NBA, and they work. But if you don't have top end talent, you're going nowhere, especially in today's sports. So you know what I mean? It's that old thing, like you have that one kid on your team who takes charges and your coaches are like, I want 12 of him. No, you want 11 or 10 of him and 1 LeBron and 1 Jordan. You do not want 12 of that guy, because at the end of the day, you still need 1 absolute ace. Everybody needs it in every sport.
God, I'm sorry. I just can't help but think of how unfortunate it is to be somebody that like your first name rhymes with A and your last name is Rodriguez. Like you're just automatically like the J Rod. Like they're calling this guy Julio Rodriguez. They're calling him J Rod. Like I'd be like, dude, are you guys serious? I get J Rod. Like you're not going to be any more original for me. Like how many? There's been K Rod, A Rod. Like you're sticking me with J Rod. This is the laziest nickname I've ever heard of.
It is.
I feel bad for the guy.
But there's two A-Rods in sports, right? And that's Aaron Rodriguez, Alex Rodriguez and Aaron Rodgers, correct? And
Yes.
K-Rod has, to this day, the single season record for saves. So if they're going to give you a nickname, might as well. This one seems to work. This one does seem to work.
I would just be like, "Are you serious?" I get like the first name dot Rod. Like that's what I'm stuck with here.
I believe when your last name is Rodriguez, you're very used to that, especially in this country. But the second part of that is that's the Mariners kid, right? That's the kid that plays with Mariners.
Yeah.
That team winning 14 in a row. The last two MLB teams to do that won the World Series. Now, I don't think they're going there, but much like the Memphis Grizzlies in basketball, oh boy, is this team exciting. Something about a young, talented team who doesn't know they shouldn't be here and are here is very exciting.
Are they going to keep this up at all?
This, no, but I mean, can they?
No, I mean not exactly this, but is this a good team?
This is a team with a very high ceiling.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about this team that I felt early on in the Kansas City Royals run, where I'm not going to put my house on these players, but boy, it does look like they've got a young core of very talented players that should be here a little bit. And that Royals team was there for a handful of years.
Yep. I mean, you gotta love J Rod.
I'm okay with the nickname. I am. You think this? He's
it's lazy.
It is lazy, but I mean, this guy's probably worked his whole life for this. Give him whatever nickname he does. Do you think he cares about the nickname? I don't think A-Rod cared about the nickname either.
Yeah, but A-Rod was A-Rod. Like, you know what I mean? That was unique for him.
Do you think K-Rod cared?
I just feel like the third time you got to care. It's like, all right, how many?
This is the fourth time. As I said, A-Rod is already a quarterback. But to my point, does Aaron Rodgers ever get confused with Alex Rodriguez? Or did the pressure of having the nickname and moniker of A-Rod really weigh down the talented quarterback?
I'm not saying he's going to be weighed down, but I feel like I would just be disrespected. Come on, I can't get something a little bit better than J-Rod.
I agree with you wholeheartedly because I think athletes should be petty. I think oftentimes
I honestly laughed when they called him J-Rod. Like, I'm like, that's it? That's the guy's nickname?
He's 21. He's got time.
Yeah, he's definitely got time. Took Pierce a while to get a good nickname.
There's a lot of young talent. Like Tim, there's a lot of young talent in MLB right now. And we'll see because the sport is very tough to watch very often. There's nothing to be gained from a 4-hour sport in the TikTok world. And I just don't care. I'm sorry. But how many great young players? There's a lot. And you know what made me sad about Sale? Because I know the show is ending. I just want to say one thing about Sale. When we got Sale, his stuff moved. And he was appointment viewing. It was the first time we had a pitcher who you legitimately, hey, I got to call out of work. Hey, I'm not going out tonight. I really want to see this guy pitch. Are the Red Sox ever going to invest in that type of guy ever again?
I mean, I can't tell you who they're going to invest in if they won't invest in Devers. I mean, what does a guy have to do? What does a guy have to do? They wouldn't invest in Lester. I mean, what does a guy have to do? You can overcome cancer and win multiple World Series and strike out 200 some odd and pitch 200 plus innings every year. It doesn't matter. It's like that. Then they'll make it up on Panda or whoever.
And they'll pay him 10 years later, by the way. They didn't pay Lester, but they paid Hanley for 8-9 years? Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It's amazing. They're probably still paying like JD Drew and stuff. I mean, I know they're still paying a lot of guys money.
Aren't they paying Price still? Or a portion of his contract still?
Wouldn't surprise me. They had to set so much of it off.
It's
No, I mean, Chris Sale is an absolute joke. That guy gets hurt.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, the guy sits out the entire year. He wasn't even supposed to have any setbacks this year. He missed months for the ribs, and then the second he comes back, and I feel like it just takes the focus off. Like, he faced 5 or 6 batters the other day. Like, he needed to come in, and shut a team down after a big loss, and he just gets like hit around the park and breaks his finger and stuff like that. I feel like it takes off the focus off what was happening. Is like, he was probably going to get shelled that game, and that, honestly, the injury kind of like even took the focus off some of that.
He's looked bad, but again, this is a man who, when they signed him, you thought, why? And certainly why for that long? It was the length of the contract that did it for me. This guy's never been healthy past August, like ever. And if he was healthy, he wasn't good. There were years where he pitched all season, but his numbers weren't good by the end of the year. He
can't make it to September. Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I love Chris Sale. I do. I love his stuff. I'm a big fan of stuff. I don't much care for the guys who could place it. Give me a guy whose curveball just goes all over the goddamn place. That's what I want.
Yeah, I mean, you knew with his delivery too that he's just an injury waiting to happen.
And his frame. Look at his frame.
Lester, good frame, good delivery. See you later. Sale, tiny frame, horrible delivery. Let's lock him up before the contract's through. But anyway, the contract is through for us on this episode of Open Season. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll catch you same time, same place. Hopefully the Red Sox wake up a little bit after this All-Star break, and maybe, just maybe, we'll know where Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are headed next week as well. So we'll talk to you then. We'll talk to you then. Have a great week.